History remembers him as the villain, the tyrant, the manipulator, the man who killed his way to the top. But history, as always, is more complicated than that. This is the story of Cao Cao, and by the end, you might not be sure whether to hate him or respect him. From the moment he entered government service, Cao Cao developed a reputation for being incorruptible and ruthless about it. He had golden clubs installed at the gates of his office. Anyone caught breaking the law, regardless of status, was beaten with them. He used them on a relative of a powerful eunuch almost immediately. The message was clear. He answered to no one. But the Han Dynasty he served was rotting from the inside. Eunuchs controlled the emperor. Warlords controlled the provinces. And in 184 AD, the Yellow Turban Rebellion exploded across the country, a massive peasant uprising that shook the dynasty to its core. Cao Cao fought against the rebellion and earned his first real military reputation here. He was good at this. Very good. His disciplined armies crushed the Yellow Turban forces in region after region. But as the rebellion was crushed and the dust settled, something became clear to Cao Cao and everyone else watching. The Han Dynasty was finished in everything but name. The throne was a puppet, and whoever controlled the puppet controlled China. Around this time, Cao Cao began experiencing severe headaches, the kind that don't go away. They would follow him for the rest of his life. Here is where we confront who Cao Cao really was. In 192 AD, after being implicated in an assassination plot against the powerful warlord Dong Zhuo, Cao Cao fled the capital. On the run, desperate, he sought refuge at the home of his father's old friend, Lu Boshe. Lu Boshe welcomed him warmly and went out to buy wine to celebrate his arrival. While he was gone, Cao Cao heard sounds coming from behind the house. Convinced it was a trap, that the family was preparing to capture him for a reward, Cao Cao made a decision, a terrible one. He ordered the slaughter of everyone on the farm, every servant, every witness. Then he burned the house. When Lu Boshe returned with wine on the road, expecting to find his home intact and his guest rested, Cao Cao encountered him, and killed him too. When asked why he had done this, Cao Cao reportedly said, "I would rather betray the world than let the world betray me." That line, that one line, follows him through all of history. It also defines the moment he became a ruthless warlord. When Dong Zhuo seized the capital and made the emperor his puppet, a coalition of warlord lords rose against him. Cao Cao joined, but he watched carefully. Most of these warlords, he noticed, were more interested in their own power than actually defeating Dong Zhuo. They bickered, they maneuvered, they postured. He filed that observation away. Over the next decade, through brilliant military strategy, ruthless politics, and an extraordinary ability to attract talent, Cao Cao systematically eliminated rivals and consolidated the north of China under his control. His masterstroke was this: he took the emperor under his protection. Technically, he was serving the Han Dynasty. In reality, the emperor went where Cao Cao said, signed what Cao Cao wanted, and appointed who Cao Cao chose. He had all the power of the throne, with none of the exposure of sitting on it. But here is what complicates the villain narrative. Cao Cao genuinely reformed the territories he controlled. Agricultural reforms, fairer taxation, rebuilding infrastructure after years of war. People who lived under him were by most accounts better off than those under other warlords. He recruited talent from everywhere, regardless of birth, background, or past loyalty to his enemies. If you were capable, Cao Cao wanted you. This was radical for the time. By the early 200s, he controlled the north. The only question left was, could he take everything? Cao Cao had one great vision left: to unite all of China under the Han throne, with himself, of course, pulling the strings from behind the curtain. It would require one decisive victory, one final campaign, one moment of military genius that would settle the matter forever. In 208 AD, he decided the time had come. 208 AD, the Battle of Red Cliffs. This is the moment. Cao Cao had just swept through the south, forcing Liu Biao's faction to surrender almost without a fight. Liu Bi barely escaped with his life. Sun Quan, ruler of the southeastern Wu territory, was the last major obstacle. Cao Cao arrived with an enormous force. Historical accounts vary, but likely somewhere between 100,000 and 220,000 troops. Sun Quan's coalition with Liu Bii could field perhaps 50,000. On paper, this was over, but Cao Cao had problems. His northern soldiers were not sailors. On the unfamiliar rivers of the south, they were getting sick, dysentery and plague tearing through his ranks. To stabilize the ships and help his soldiers fight on water, he ordered the ships chained together. On the other side, Liu Bei's strategist Zhuge Liang and Sun Quan's brilliant general Zhou Yu saw exactly what to do. They studied Cao Cao's fleet. They studied the wind patterns. And they formulated a plan so elegant in its simplicity that it would be taught in military academies for centuries. Fire ships, loaded with kindling and oil, disguised as a surrender fleet, they would sail directly into the chained armada on a favorable wind. The result was catastrophic. The chained ships couldn't scatter. Fire jumped from vessel to vessel. Cao Cao's great southern fleet burned on the Yangtze River, and with it, his dream of unifying China in his lifetime. Thousands died. The screams echoed across the water. By morning, the river itself seemed to be on fire. Whether the agony was from the defeat, the illness spreading through his army, or his chronic headaches, history doesn't clearly separate the three. What we know is that Cao Cao would never come this close again. The dream of unification died on the Yangtze River, and the pain in his head only intensified. China would be divided into 3 kingdoms. And Cao Cao, the man who held most of it, would spend the rest of his life knowing he came within reach of everything and lost it all in a single night. Here is what makes Cao Cao impossible to simply dismiss as a villain. He was one of the finest poets of his era. His writing, particularly after Red Cliffs, reflects a man deeply aware of mortality, of ambition, of the passage of time. One of his most famous poems translates roughly as, "Life is but a morning dew. The days of hardship are many." He wrote about the suffering of war with genuine feeling. He reformed laws. He mourned soldiers. He wept openly at the deaths of advisors he respected. And yet, he also executed men for perceived slights. He had rivals eliminated. He operated always from the position that trust was a luxury he could not afford. By his later years, the headaches had become debilitating. We're talking about a man who commanded hundreds of thousands of troops, administered an entire kingdom, and wrote poetry, all while managing what modern physicians, looking back at historical descriptions, suspect was severe chronic migraine or possibly a neurological condition. Enter Hua Tuo, arguably the greatest physician in Chinese history. The man is credited with developing one of the earliest known forms of anesthesia, performing complex surgeries, and advancing medicine centuries beyond his time. Hua Tuo diagnosed Cao Cao and proposed a solution, a surgical procedure on the brain itself to relieve the source of the pain. Cao Cao had him arrested and executed. The man who spent his life trusting no one could not bring himself to trust the one person who might have actually helped him. The same instinct that built his empire, "I would rather betray the world than let the world betray me," may have cost him the relief he spent decades searching for. He died in 220 AD at the age of 65, likely still in pain. His son Cao Pi took the final step immediately after, officially declaring the Wei Dynasty, ending the Han Dynasty his father had spent his life nominally serving. Cao Cao, the man who held the puppet strings of an empire, never wore the crown himself. Cao Cao's legacy is enormous and still contested. In Chinese culture for centuries, he was the standard image of the treacherous minister, cunning, self-serving, dangerous. Opera traditions painted his face white, the color of treachery. Modern reassessment has rehabilitated him significantly. Historians now point to his administrative reforms, his meritocracy, his genuine literary contributions, and the stability he brought to a fractured North. His tomb was discovered in 2009 in Anyang, Henan province, itself a controversy, since Cao Cao famously ordered decoy tombs built to prevent grave robbing. Very on brand. But here is the detail that stops you cold. Visitors to his tomb regularly leave aspirin, for a man dead 1,800 years, still in pain in the memory of the people who know his story. Strangers leave him the one thing he never had: modern relief for ancient suffering. History doesn't get more human than that. A quick note. Much of what popular culture knows about Cao Cao comes from Romance of the Three Kingdoms, the 14th century novel by Luo Guanzhong. In that version, Cao Cao is written as the primary villain to contrast against Liu Bei's noble heroism. The real Cao Cao was more complex. The Chen family killing, likely true. The quote about betraying the world, probably real. But many of his worst moments are dramatized, and many of his genuine achievements quietly left out. History gave us a man. Fiction gave us a villain. The truth, as always, is somewhere in between. Next time, Liu Bei, the idealist, the underdog, the king who built a kingdom on loyalty and tears. Was he really the hero Romance of the Three Kingdoms made him out to be? We'll find out.